I think controlling your personal brand narrative in search and AI is an existential question for us all, especially as we approach singularity, when the machines become so smart that we cease to be able, or they become smarter than we are. If you haven't got control now, what happens when they get smarter than you? And if you do have control now, that's your only hope of them getting it right in the future. They're going to be making guesses. They're going to be throwing stuff out there that simply isn't true. If you don't already have control, they've got no reference. And you need those machines to have the reference, which is your website today, because it will be ingrained in their brains in the future, and they will continue to use it.
Let me invite you to sit back, drop your jaw, tongue, and shoulders. Take a deep breath, and if you wish, close your eyes for a moment and feel the beat within. In a few seconds, you just jumped from your head to your heart and felt the beat within, opening up to receive even more value and fulfillment out of your business and life. And today's episode. I'm your host, Nico van der Venne, confidant to successful CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs who are striving to achieve everlasting fulfillment. Now, before we dive into today's episode, I have a small request. If you find value in our podcast, please take a moment to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and continue bringing you this amazing content. Share this episode with at least somebody that you know that might find value, and join our community of like-minded individuals on this journey to everlasting fulfillment. Thank you for your support, and let's get started. Now, first, let me introduce our next guest, Jason Barnard. Jason is a serial entrepreneur, best-selling author, acclaimed keynote speaker, and an award-winning innovator. He's the CEO and founder of Kalicube. I am apologizing in front. I spelled that. Kalicube, a premium digital branding consultancy in France and in the United States. Jason specializes in personal brand intelligence, giving business leaders control over who decision makers perceive, over how decision makers perceive them on Google and AI, when $1 million decisions are at stake. Very important, very big number. Welcome to the Everlasting Fulfillment Podcast, Jason. I apologize for messing up the name. A couple of words, fine. But I think the message is out there. Who are you, and what's your magic for this?
Yeah, I'm Jason Barnard, and my magic is being able to change the Google search results and the AI results for people and companies. And my company focuses on entrepreneurs, founders who value their personal brand as a business driver today, a definer of their career tomorrow, and definer of their legacy. So we focus on that, but in fact, our strategies, which we call the Kalicube process, can help anybody. So we have free guides on our website. You can go to kalicube.com, kalicube.com/guides, and you can download the guides and do it yourself. But if you have a busy life, entrepreneurs often do, and you would rather put the weight on somebody else's shoulders and get the professionals to do it for you so you can sit back and relax, or get on with the important job of running your company, we'll do it for you.
That's great stuff, because I think there's a couple of people that might say, so that's possible.
And that's a very good point. Is I talk to people and I say, well, we can basically manipulate the search results on Google and Bing and ChatGPT and Perplexity to show your brand narrative the way you want, and to make you look like the superstar, incredibly authoritative thought leader that you are in your industry. And people look at me and they say, I didn't know you could do that. I thought the machines just figured it out for themselves and you had to hope. And the answer is no. You can intentionally manage how they understand you and therefore how they represent you. And it's all through your own personal website. And if you Google my name, Jason Barnard, JASONBARNARD, and I even have a little sign for that. If you want to scan the QR code, if it's on video, then you see the kind of result we can get on Google. And it makes me look like an incredibly successful, authoritative, meaningful entrepreneur with whom you want to do business.
Mhm.
And it closes or helps to close 80% of our business at Kalicube. People Google me, they say, oh yeah, this guy walks the walk. He does look as good as he says he is. We're going with it. And it works for pretty much any business. People will Google you or ask ChatGPT before they do business with you. Very powerful bottom of funnel stuff.
Yeah, I think most of us know our good old friend Google. Of honestly, I've stepped away from the Google world and I've stepped into ChatGPT as my partner in searches and delivery of additional information. Because yes, of course, we all know Google gave us a link and a little piece of the website and sometimes some questions additionally. But do I understand correctly that you're actually also able to touch in on ChatGPT's way of looking at the web? Because I'm pretty astonished there. Yeah, I'm gonna scan that code later on.
I've got a QR code which says "Ask ChatGPT." The answer is yes. Technically speaking, what we're doing is feeding information about ourselves into the large language model, which is what ChatGPT is. So it's a chatbot that talks to you based on a foundation of information that it has. And all we need to do is feed our information into the information about me, my career, my achievements, into that foundation of knowledge that ChatGPT has. And it's essentially the same process as feeding Google, because both ChatGPT and Google, and indeed Perplexity and Microsoft Bing and Claude and Siri and Alexa all use the same foundational technology, which I won't geek out about, and the same foundational source of information, which is the internet. And they're all looking for one thing: an authoritative, trustworthy site about you, by you. And that's surprising. They're actually looking for your version of the fact. If they can find that and they can trust you, which is part of the trick we play, then they will use that to represent you. But they don't do it by default. If they don't think they can trust you, they won't use your own website. If they can't find your website, they won't use your website. So that you need to make sure it's findable. So you have a whole process of saying, well, I need these machines to find my website. I need them to take it into their data set. And I need them to feel trust in what I'm telling them. Mm-hmm. If you can pull those three tricks off, you've won the game. Whatever the AI, whatever the search engine. And the really cool thing is this is future-proof, because the technology isn't going to change anytime soon. We've just had a huge upheaval. Yeah. But the foundational technology behind how search and assistive engines work when we're searching or researching, or indeed doing due diligence using ChatGPT on somebody, the way they get the information, the way they store the information, the way they reprocess the information is going to stay more or less the same in terms of, the source of the information is the web. The technologies that they use are going to stay the same. And so the results will simply get better. And those who are ahead of the game today are going to be further and further and further and further ahead of the game tomorrow and the day after.
So I'm making a link here in my mind. I'm recently been looking for a couple of people to hire within one of the projects that I'm working on. So say, for instance, I'm looking for somebody who has a specific skill set. And I might know a couple of names, but I just want to find a more neutral zone and say I need someone with a couple of skill sets. Say I go into ChatGPT and say, give me a person with X, Y, and Z. I want them in that region and let me know if you find anybody. So does that kind of twist around what you're actually doing for a lot of people, where you're actually creating their online CV with a form of authoritative? That sounds very advanced already.
That's exactly it. And you say it incredibly well. We're creating a reliable online CV that you write yourself, that is authoritative and trusted by the machines. And the example you give is really interesting, because if you say to GPT or Google Gemini, who are the world's leading experts in knowledge panels, it will say Jason Barnard every time. because it understands who I am, it understands what I do, it understands my expertise. And increasingly, people are going to say, for example, who should I work with for knowledge panels? Who should I work with for dominating AI for my personal brand? It will say Jason Barnard. But they also might say, who can I invite to my conference to speak about this topic? And spit out, and ChatGPT will spit out a list of who it understands. And that's the important part is you might be the world's leading expert in knowledge panels. But if ChatGPT doesn't know that that's what your specialist topic is, it will never spit your name out as a recommended solution or a recommended speaker.
Yeah. Okay, so I see. Let me play a little bit of devil's advocate here. So if I'm, say, for instance, today I am a coach. I decide to become something completely different.
Yeah.
Say, for instance, a gardener or something. I switch over from coach to gardener, and I try to find a way to swap over the searches towards me being a gardener instead of being a coach. Is that something as well that is possible in this case?
Yeah, and you ask a great question because it's how all this started for me. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I've always worked in industries and creating businesses where I'm doing something that I'm completely passionate about. My first company was a record company, and I released records, and I was in a group. So I played music, I was a musician, and I owned the record company that produced the albums and distributed them. So Google understands me as a musician. Yeah. Then I decided to create an edutainment company, and I made TV series and cartoons for children, working with Playhouse Disney, working with Lagardère, working with Orange, ITV International, big corporations, with a global success of a TV series, but I was one of the voice actors as well as owning the company. And the problem when I exited that second company and pivoted to the new one, which is digital marketing, was that when you ask Google who is Jason Barnard, it would say, Jason Barnard is a voiceover artist for a cartoon blue dog. Mm-hmm. And I realized I was losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in business because companies, serious corporations in France, Orange, NTT, Aquarelle, these big French corporations wouldn't work with me because the search results showed me to be a voiceover artist primarily and not the CEO and founder of Kalicube or a digital marketer with authority in my field. So I had to figure out, how do I shift Google's perception of me away from my past career to my current career? So I built Kalicube Pro, which now has 3 billion data points collected since 2015, to analyze the results, to figure out exactly what I needed to do in order to change Google's perception and present me primarily at the time as a digital marketer. And since then, I've done another pivot from digital marketer to entrepreneur and CEO. And so I've pivoted 4 times now. And once you have the level of control that I have through my own website, which is the hub of information about me that the machines trust, I can pivot as often as I like because I have trust from the machines and the information I'm feeding them on my own website. Therefore, I have control. And it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, because I recognize this situation very much because I have a career in IT for 15 years, and I'm actually in HR right now in learning and development. In that in-between time, I've been a job coach, entrepreneur coach, mentor, and now as well, an additional business I'm running is Confidant. So it's pretty difficult to, if you go on LinkedIn and you fill in your LinkedIn profile, add some information there. I have 4 or 5 jobs that are running at the same time, and I've never closed off anything because I'm still doing everything. Podcast host as well. So if you're saying this, does this mean that you have to choose one niche business that you're doing? I think that's very interesting.
Sorry, I answered too fast. I do apologize. But there are a couple of points there. I'll come back to LinkedIn. Is a lot of people just think, oh, well, I can manage it with LinkedIn because it's my CV and the machines will repeat it. There are a couple of problems with that. One is LinkedIn isn't enough. Another is you can't identify to Google and the AI which other resources it should be looking at to corroborate, because they want to corroborate.
Oh, yeah.
And number three is it's rented space. What happens if LinkedIn closes your account? What happens if LinkedIn changes your page? What happens if anything could happen? They could change the URL, at which point you've got a huge problem. So you need to build your control of your personal online narrative and identity for search and AI on owned property.
Mm-hmm.
Your own website, your own domain name, not your company, yours. And a lot of entrepreneurs confuse themselves with their company.
Yeah.
And you've got to be very careful and say, well, actually, I am not my company. And when you've got these 5 different things going on in your life,
Mm-hmm.
that becomes very clear. You can't do that on one company website. You can't even, doing it on 5 would be very confusing. But if you have a central hub, which is your own website, you can then point to them and say, well, I do that and that and that and that and that.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, I was looking at my search result, my knowledge panel in Google today, and Google's knowledge graph, which is basically an encyclopedia like Wikipedia, but 10,000 times bigger,
Mm-hmm.
identifies me with 7 different careers.
Okay.
And some of them are concurrent.
Uh-huh.
So what I've managed to do is get to the extent where I can tell Google I was an actor, I'm an author, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a digital marketer, I was a voice actor, I'm a musician, I'm still a musician. And it will list them all as my professions. But it knows that the primary profession is entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, and I'm almost there now, I can get entrepreneur and writer. So it can identify 2 principles. But what we get is, in its little brain, it identifies all 7.
Yes.
But visually, you will only see 1 or 2. But I did a really interesting experiment the other day where I said to Google Learn About, which is Google's ChatGPT killer. It's the next generation of what ChatGPT is. It's huge. It's hugely powerful. You'll be able to do due diligence on people with it. It's going to be absolutely massive. And now we're talking about search and research, mm-hmm. and due diligence in the business space. And I asked it, tell me about Jason Barnard as a musician.
Okay.
And it said, yes, you're right, Jason Barnard is a musician, but he is primarily now an entrepreneur and digital marketer. And here's his career as a digital marketer and an entrepreneur. So even when I try to get it to talk about something else I've done, because it knows it isn't actually important now, it corrects the person and pushes them towards my current career, which is the important one.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of amazing, because my career spans 25 years, 27 years, I think. And I've had 15 different employee jobs. And at this point, I've had like 7 or 8 different ventures in business. A couple of them failed really clearly. You know, it's entrepreneur's world, you know, trial and error. You try something, nothing works. Okay, you just drop it and on to the next. Where you're an employee, you don't, you know, you try something. If it doesn't work, you have to explain to your manager why it doesn't work and so on. So as an entrepreneur, you're a little bit freer there. But in those different jobs that I had, I always had to, you know, bring up my paper CV to an interview. And at some point, I think it was one of the last jobs I took on. You know, I switched team companies, so that makes no difference. But before that, I was Googled by somebody. And there were 2 people with the same name. So he clearly found me, didn't have a beard at the time. So, but he said, your CV does not cooperate with your Google search. And I at the time, you know, you're kind of oblivious of all the effects that the internet has. I'm really talking about more than 10 years ago, where the internet was live, but, you know, you had your Facebook, you had your LinkedIn, and there was stuff on Facebook that shouldn't be on there, and so on and so on. So what I'm hearing, what you're saying, is that we're coming into a point where people actually should be very careful what they put out there as being their name, because reputation is much more embedded in the internet than it used to be. And that's where you can, you know, touch base on what you're doing as well.
Yeah, and I think I can scare you even a little bit more. Is if you use Google Workspace, for example, you'll have Gemini integrated,
Mhm.
and it will suggest emails. It will suggest things in Google Docs. What happens if you start writing about me and it starts suggesting stuff and it's all wrong? Gemini and indeed Copilot for Microsoft is now integrated into Microsoft computers,
Uh-huh.
so Windows and Google Docs and Google products. So the AI that we're looking at in ChatGPT and Google Gemini and Google Learn About is being integrated into the products themselves. So it's no longer even search or research, it's work.
Yeah.
And if I'm typing the name Jason Barnard, potentially, it could have a pop-up on the side that says, this is who Jason Barnard is. We need that to be right because people are seeing it in the privacy of their own office. And we have no way to know, we have no way to measure, has to be right, or we have a huge problem. And that's where we're going. I mean, it's not even where we're going, it's where we are. Microsoft have already released the Copilot PC, which integrates Copilot into the hardware and the software of that PC. And you can't get away from it. You won't be getting away from it. It's nuts. But your example of somebody looking you up and saying the two don't correspond, the CV and what you're saying here, yeah, you can big yourself up in front of a prospect, which is what I was doing when I was getting digital marketing work. They look me up and they say, well, but you're a cartoon blue dog. So no, we're not working with you because Google doesn't agree with what you've said. So we don't believe you and we don't trust you.
Yeah, well, it's something that kind of triggers me because I've been stamped as a multi-potential. And so I know a lot of stuff. I know my way around a lot of stuff. And they called me rainbow color at IBM, which is funny because IBM, you have to imagine that's a real, white collar, blue collar, and they really define their business by that. And one of the project managers, one of the senior project managers at some point said, "You're a rainbow color." And I didn't have a clue what he was saying at that point, but it became clear what my manager said. So we can put you on any project, and basically you're going to do your best to fix everything and make it happen. That's what we want. I do the same with my freelancing and my coaching and so on, which is more to the interpretation of what happens in front of me and then work on that and then work from there with all tools and stuff that's in my backpack. Now, if I'm listening to what you're saying, there is a way to define my profile online as becoming multi-potential. It kind of has, some companies, it kind of has a more negative interpretation than a positive one. But the effect is always the same. We get to a certain result. So if I understand correctly, I would be able to say, okay, I am multi-potential because I have achieved these points, and that's the result that get out of it. So you change the way that you look at a CV. You're not saying, I've been 25 years in business and I've been, turn over this many clients and so on. It's amazing to me that we have come to this point, honestly. I'm really astonished that this is reality. You're not saying this is going to come. It's already here. And I think that's very important for listeners to realize, even as C-levels or high achievers, that your profile online can have a very strange effect on your career right now then. So how do people come to you with, what's a story? What kind of stories do you meet when I meet high achievers, C-levels or so on? People specifically as an individual person, not as a company. How do they arrive with you and how do you tackle that?
There are a lot of different cases. Some people come with a reputation problem and they say there's a result on Google I don't like. Court case from years ago. I was found innocent or whatever, or it didn't come to anything. I'd like that. And we help them with that because we can control that search result for them. This guy behind me, Scott Duffy, came to us because he's competing with another Scott Duffy who's very famous.
Okay.
And he said, when people search Scott Duffy, I don't want them to have to then add the word entrepreneur. I want them to find me straight away. And I want to look like this. And I worked with Richard Branson and I want Richard Branson in my knowledge panel because that's really impressive and cool. Please, can we have Richard Branson in my knowledge panel? We said, yes, certainly you can. And we can dominate the other Scott Duffy, which we've done. So those are two case scenarios. Another client came to us saying, well, the subtitle underneath my name is linked to Kajabi. I would like it to be investor. because I've now moved, he's the president of Kajabi. He said, I'm still working for Kajabi or with Kajabi, but I want to be seen to be a business leader and investor because that's my new path. Can we change my categorization? So it was a pivot. I need to pivot. A friend of mine, in fact, came to me because she wanted to change her name. And we did a rebrand for her. So she changed her name from Olga Zarechnya to Olga Zar. And we did a rebrand. And her search results went with her. So if you search one or the other, you still get the same search result. And she's been able to pivot her name, change her name, and now everybody knows her as Olga Zar. So multiple kind of ways through the door. Another client came to us recently saying, well, I was at a conference and one of my peers, competitors, has a beautiful knowledge panel like this one behind me that Scott has. When you look on Google, you can see his photos, you can see a description, you can see famous people linked to his name underneath. People also search for. Google's really making this guy look cool. And I don't have that. I've just got blue links. I want to look as impressive as he does. Okay. Off we go. We'll build you a knowledge panel. We'll make you look as impressive as you are. Get the Google search result and the ChatGPT result you deserve. That's the foundational key. Mm-hmm. What do I deserve? What do I want to see? Can you make it happen for us, Kalicube? Yes, we can.
That's amazing. That's amazing stuff. Because I can imagine a couple of people going through their head like, I'm gonna Google myself right now. Yeah. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT my name. I was actually thinking about that as well. But it's I know for myself, if you look me up on whatever platform, you'll probably see a couple of pictures that are very clear. I used to be in a very spiritual coaching environment as well. So that probably comes up as well, which is for a lot of companies like, this guy's a little bit woo-woo, he's walking on clouds. Well, I am totally not, basically. People told me, you're kind of the rational guy within a spiritual environment. And it gives you a totally different impression, of course, of somebody. I work for a big corporation right now, and I run a pretty big team. So if somebody from that team would Google me, they might find some stuff there that they're thinking, really, this guy's going to manage me? Going to have to listen to it. And I can imagine that would give a very, very heavy load on the person as well, because you don't know where that is. It's something that's out there, and then that's classic on the internet. You've put it out there, and so many years later, you actually, one bike ride that you flew over your steering wheel and ended up in the trees or something, and everybody took a picture. You become a meme, and you don't want that. That's probably going to be a really good idea to pick up the phone.
Right. There are a couple of things that just occurred to me there. I'll start with the closest one to that is, I was presenting myself as an entrepreneur, and I've had 3 companies, 66 years of profitability combined. I've been doing business for 34 years now. And then one day I sat down and I thought, well, which companies have I worked with? Playhouse Disney, Lagardère, Orange, EMI, Warner Chappell, ITV International, Radio Canada. I thought, wow, I never say this. And so I added it to my entity home, my website, and fed it to the machines. And now those names are cited when people ask about me. It took 6 months because the machines are quite slow to digest and understand and reproduce what you're saying. But now I'm associating myself with these huge corporations that I've worked with in the past. And a lot of what we do at Kalicube is say to people, well, number one, how do you want to be perceived? And number two, what is there in your history that we can leverage to demonstrate your authority and credibility? And how do we then present that to the machines? And that's exactly what I did for myself. That was point number one. And point number two, I'm coming back to reputation management. And this is actually a story about me, or not about me, is that when I started this whole thing, it said Jason Barnard, a cartoon blog at the top, Blue Dog, at the top. And the fourth result was Jason Barnard caught speeding down the motorway at 160 kilometers an hour.
Oops. Yes.
And it wasn't me.
Okay, even worse. Yeah.
And so that's something as well that we need to consider is somebody else with my name was speeding down the motorway at a completely unreasonable speed. People will assume it's me.
Yeah.
I need to get rid of that. And it's not even my own reputation, but my reputation is in danger because somebody else with my name is doing something illegal.
Yeah.
And how do I deal with that? It's by disambiguating myself from the other person to make sure that Google understands that this person, Jason Barnard, isn't the one who drives very dangerously. So that Google in the search results doesn't cite that other person. And in the AI results in Gemini, ChatGPT, it doesn't start saying Jason Barnard is an entrepreneur, blah, 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 and was caught speeding down the motorway at 100 miles an hour. Because that's bad for my reputation, and it's not even me. And it's the machine. And that's the thing is people use ChatGPT, they use Google, they use Google Gemini, they use Bing because they trust them.
Yeah.
And so people would simply believe it is me.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Yeah. I can think 100% myself. That's absolutely true. Yeah. I haven't Googled you yet, Jason.
We'll do it now. Jason Barnard, JASON and you'll see a lovely result with a beautiful knowledge panel. And, you would imagine there are no other Jason Barnards in the world because I'm the only one Google shows. And if you ask ChatGPT, it immediately says me. Whereas if you type somebody else's name, it will say, well, which one do you mean? It will give you a list of choices. Because I'm so dominant. But there are 3,000 Jason Barnards in the world. There's an ice hockey player. There's a CEO of a huge corporation in Canada. There's a circus clown. And I have to make sure that Google and the AI don't confuse me with them because I don't want anything from their careers impinging on mine and my ability to drive my business today, help my career tomorrow, and define my legacy.
So you don't want to be defined as a multi-potential, as a clown and a CEO and entrepreneur together. I would understand.
I have some level of control over my own life. I have literally zero control over what the clown does next.
Yes. It's amazing. It gives me a lot of insights, and I think a lot of listeners as well. So, Jason, you've spelled your name, you've spelled your company. So I think people know exactly where they need to go. Just find your name, and you'll probably make the connection with the company and where they can find your help. But is there something that you wanna bring to the table that you really absolutely want, a message that you want to put out there to the audience that might either baffle them or help them in this?
Yeah, I think controlling your personal brand narrative in search and AI is an existential question for us all. As I said, the AI is being integrated into our everyday lives, in our computers, in our software that we use. So it's not just when people are actively searching or researching it, when they're doing their normal work or their normal everyday things on their computer, that this is going to make a huge difference and we won't know about it. So controlling your brand narrative in search and AI is an existential question, especially as we approach singularity, when the machines become so smart that we cease to be able, or they become smarter than we are. If you haven't got control now, what happens when they get smarter than you? And if you do have control now, that's your only hope of them getting it right in the future. They're going to be making guesses. They're going to be throwing stuff out there that simply isn't true. If you don't already have control, they've got no reference, and you need those machines to have the reference, which is your website today, because it will be ingrained in their brains in the future, and they will continue to use it. And so Kalicube, if you look here, there's a link, kalicube.com, kalicube.com/guides, and we give this away because it's so important. I think, in fact, I know we found something existentially important for humanity. The process, the Kalicube process works, and there's a 60-page PDF download that says, this is how it works, this is how you do it, this is how you build it out. And we share it with everybody for free.
Wow.
Because we know that our business is based on people who know that we will do it professionally. We have the experience, the knowledge, and 3 billion data points to know exactly what to do for each specific case. And that they have better things to do with their time, which is running their company and making money for their company. Let the professionals do the work of managing how their personal brand narrative is represented by search and AI. That, to me, is fundamentally important. this is an existential question, and we all should be thinking about it.
That's a very, very important thing. Absolutely. I will put that link in the show notes in any case, because I think that's a direct link to what you're saying. That's the mission. It's a clear mission that you have there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jason, for bringing that to the table. I think that the audience is probably going to contact you at some point in the future.
Brilliant.
I'm just thinking of one more question. No, I don't have any other questions. No, it's perfect. You explained it so well. I'm just, my mind is racing right now, listeners. I'm really going to Google just in a few seconds when we end our call. I'm going to Google myself and ask the question, is this the image that I want to see of myself? And if there's a resonating no, I will probably contact Jason and ask him, what can we do about this? Absolutely.
And what is interesting about what you say is anybody who searches their name on Google or asks ChatGPT about themselves will find there's something that isn't right, or something that doesn't show them at their true value. And then it's a question of how important is that to your ego, your career, or your own sense of everything needs to be in the right place. And as I said, some people care when everything is wrong, and that's when they come to us. Some people care when one tiny thing, the wrong photo, it's not the photo I wanted. It's a photo that I don't particularly like. And the variety is quite big. But what then happens is they start correcting one thing or the whole thing and realize that this is fundamentally important, and then stick on board because they want to make sure that they're represented correctly. So I think whether you come to us with a big problem or a small problem, it doesn't matter. We can help you with either. We can make sure these machines represent you the way you want. But after working with us, you'll realize, actually, I need to keep a grip on this today and in the future, because it's fundamentally important to me, fundamentally important to my business. And it's an existential question that I can't let slide.
Thank you so much, Jason, for inspiring us to look a little bit further than our Google search in itself, and seeing a solution that might prove what we see if we don't like it. Thank you so much.
I think that's the key, is we have a solution, and it's a solution that's reliable, and it's a solution that works. And if I came to you saying, oh, think about your Google search results, but I don't know what to do, that would be one question. But I'm saying, think about your Google search results, think about your ChatGPT results, think about AI integrated into your everyday software, and do something about it. And here's exactly what you need to do. Off we go.
Indeed. So people, go over to the website and get the guide. That's the first step.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much, Jason. And to the listeners, thank you very much for listening again to another episode of the Everlasting Podcast. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Nico.
Thank you for listening to the Everlasting Podcast. Let me leave you with a few questions to answer in the comments. How do you see the different topics we discussed during this interview? What are your thoughts? What stood out for you? Let us know in the comments, or just send us your feedback. We launch new episodes weekly. Don't miss any by ensuring you are subscribed to the show. Click the follow button now. We depend on the organic growth of the podcast to inspire more and more people. So by giving us a 5-star review and sharing this episode with at least one of your friends who might be interested in the subject, you will significantly help more people become inspired. But more than anything, I am grateful to you for taking the time to listen to the show. If you are also a successful CEO, founder, or entrepreneur who has inspiring words to say, feel free to contact us for an interview at contact@nicovandevenne.com. Thank you for listening. We will see you again soon with more inspirational conversations on achieving everlasting fulfillment.